Hello and welcome to this calm little corner where I speak with other not a messy bitches about how organization helps them thrive. Today I'm joined by my very good friend, writer and writing coach, Marina Crouse of Marina Crouse Writes. Whatever your wordly needs are, she's here to help. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me, Monica.
Oh,
I'm so
thanks for
excited.
being here. And thank you for this. I just received this in the mail. Let's see if you can see. This is a postcard from Marina reminding me to check on my car so it doesn't nearly get towed again. But we're not here to talk about my street parking situation. Today we are talking about creativity and organization. And that's exactly why I brought a resident expert on creativity, Marina.
Oh, thank you so much. High praise, but I'm here. I dabble in creativity and I dabble in organization, and they are very mutually beneficial. So
yeah, I think for so many people, when they think of a creative or they think of an artist, their like mind naturally just kind of imagines this beautiful chaos, right? Like for a writer, it's the manuscript with coffee rings staining the sheets. And maybe for like a visual artist, it's like, splatters of paint everywhere or a workshop with bits and bobs. I was just wondering like what kind of role does organization play in your creativity?
well, I won't disappoint you. There is a lot of beautiful chaos to my desk and to my brain and to my general day, but I find that having an organizational system helps me stay on track. And so for like a literal organization, I need my desk to be clear and tidy at the end of every workday so that when I sit down in the morning, I don't feel overwhelmed by where I'm starting. Usually as I'm writing, I write on my computer usually. So I'll be typing, and if I come up with an idea that I can't incorporate in my manuscript but need to write down, I will put it on a post-it note. And by the end of the day, it's like A Beautiful Mind, that movie with the map and strings, but post-its all over my desk. And then I take like 10 minutes at the end of my day to organize my post-its into little stacks. And then I will, if it's sometimes I'll jot down, like, don't forget to call my grandma, and I will write that in my planner at the end of the day and toss the post-it. But a lot of the times it's like ideas for a different story or for a plot point later. And then I have a master sheet where I put all those ideas to return to. So it's like a funnel of like chaos into organization. And I try to have one end point. And then for like the more ethereal part of the organization, for writing, there are kind of two schools of thought for writing a story. And it's, if you're really organized and a planner, you're someone who outlines. And if you're more free thinking in the planning phase, you're someone what's called a pantser, like you fly by the seat of your pants. I'm a pantser.
Okay, so I saw that term pantser on your Instagram the other day, and it was one of those days where I didn't have time to actually like click through and like, read what that was about. But in my mind, a pantser is someone who like pulls people's pants down on the playground. So I was like,
yeah,
I'm gonna come back to that.
I've never done that, but I did get a lot of messages from family and friends with similar questions like, what do you mean by that? Like, did you read my post? But pantser is just a funny term for, you're writing at the seat of your pants. You're figuring out the scene as you write it. And that's something I do. And so, but again, at the end of each writing session, to help future me out, I usually jot down an idea or two of like what I want to explore the next session I'm writing. So that's like my version of outlining. And so staying organized with my thoughts or my ideas or any physical materials is really important, because so quickly I can just get lost in the shuffle and lost in the chaos, and then it becomes paralyzing for me.
Huh. I love that you have a system and that it's so tangible, right? There's like the transferring the note to call grandma into the planner and then crumpling it, which is so satisfying, right? And
Oh,
throwing it
yes.
into the to the trash bin, and then also safely logging your other ideas for the future. How about organizing your time? How does that work for you?
I have to be really fierce about it, because if I don't guard my time and set aside, I like to sit down for 2 hours, because that gives me like 30 minutes of kind of putzing around before I focus. So I when I'm working on a serious project, I will set the same time every day. When I was working on finishing my first manuscript, I sat down at 9-ish, and would write for like 2.5 hours every morning. And I would silence my phone and silence my computer. You can do that on Macs.
That's
And
awesome.
I had to really schedule that out, because if I didn't set that side of time for myself, I would kind of get distracted with, oh, let me just do this one task, or let me answer this email. And then all of a sudden it'd be 5 p.m. and I wouldn't have written, and I'd be really tired. And so it's so important to organize your time and figure out how to prioritize each day or each
Mhm.
week or each minute what tasks you need to be doing for yourself and for your business. And I schedule self-care in there. So I will write in the morning, and I'm self-employed, but I still take an hour lunch, and then I get back to work. And then usually at 3 p.m., if I don't have calls, I'll go stretch for 30 minutes in the sun. Well, hopefully it's sunny, but I have to schedule that in there. Otherwise, I get swallowed up by time.
Yeah, that's so important. A couple of years ago, I read this book by the choreographer Twyla Tharp. It's called the Creative Habit,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think basically her thesis was like creativity is something you have to make a routine out of, right? Like so many of us believe that creativity is just going to like strike us. We're going to be filled with divine inspiration, and you never know when it's going to come. But she's like, it's actually the opposite. You have to be disciplined, and you have to work at it in order for to reach that point. In order to create, like you have to be very purposeful and intentional about it. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm so glad that you are both intentional about your creativity, but also about your self-care. That's really, really important.
Because a lot of times I think creativity, if it's not your job, if it's more of a hobby or a side project, it's considered frivolous, or like it's considered self-care. And it's, for me, it's part of my being. I can't function without it. And yet I still put it on the back burner when there's more administrative things to take care of, because I think, oh, I'll just get those done really quickly. But for anyone who's ever had 10 emails or more in their inbox, you know that does not take 10 minutes. That ends up snowballing into like 2 hours. So, we have to really guard your time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So in part of organizing or decluttering, there's this piece that a lot of people struggle with, which is letting go. And I was just wondering, do you ever struggle to let go of things throughout your creative process?
I think I did more when I was first starting, because I was really precious about everything I wrote, not because I thought it was the world's greatest writing, but because I was afraid it would never get any better. And
Mm.
there's something really freeing about just highlighting a copy of text and hitting delete. And so, and I was talking about this with another writing coach yesterday, but honestly, when it comes to writing, like deep writing, the first draft is cake. It's the revising, that's the deep work, the deep writing. So for my method, if I'm unsure about a scene, I might copy it and put it into a separate Word document so that I can come back to it if I think maybe it needs to be polished or shuffled around the scene scope. But a lot of times I just highlight and delete because I have faith that my brain will come up with something similarly good or better. And I think it's learning to let go of my ideas in a story or full story ideas is really huge. I read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, and
That's
it was,
exactly what I was thinking about.
yeah, and she talked about, she has this theory that, there are all these stories floating around, these ideas floating around, and if you come up with one and you don't act on it, it will leave because it's going to someone else. That was my takeaway. And I think for so long I would guard these ideas, and I had notebook after notebook and files, and I could never find anything because I was really disorganized and put a lot of stuff in storage. And finally I just decided I'm not going to worry about those past ideas. If they're really important, if I'm meant to write it, it'll come back. But I'm going to work on what is right in front of me, what I'm really excited about in this month. And that again was really freeing. And I did that this past year in 2020. My goal was to write a whole novel because we had time. And I started with this novel idea I had had back when I lived in a different city, and I kept chipping away at it. And I just was getting distracted with other ideas, and it was really not serving me. And finally, I think I worked on it from April till August, and just, it was like pulling teeth. And so I just said, I'm not going to work on it anymore. And I picked up a different idea. And I wrote that novel in 3 months because it was what I wanted to be working on, and it was what my brain wanted to be working on. And the ability of letting go was key to that. If I had otherwise, I would have just kept, I'd probably still be working on that first novel idea
Yeah.
and being miserable.
Yeah, I think we all have to learn to let go so that we can reach, or so our hands are free to embrace the whatever is coming to us, right? We have to trust in abundance. Like you said, use the word faith, right? You have to have faith that things will get better, or your ideas and your writing will get better and stronger.
Yeah. And you and I have talked a lot in the past about the idea of abundance, and it took me a while to really learn that term. And now I trust in the abundance of my ideas. I know there will be more to come. I'm smart, I'm creative, I've got a weird brain. It'll work out eventually. So
You
I
have the
think,
beautiful mind.
thank you. Post-it
Beautiful
notes and
mind
all.
we were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think a lot of it is just learning to be in the moment, knowing and having faith that there will be more moments ahead of you so that you can focus on the one you're in right now.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I want to take a quick moment to move away from your writing and talking about your creative process to talking about your physical space. So you recently posted on Instagram that one of the reasons why you might have a writing block is because of your environmental distractions. And you and I have also recently worked together to declutter your space a few times. And so I was wondering if you could just share what that experience was like. How did you feel before and how do you feel after? Was there anything that surprised you in the process?
Yeah. Every time I move or go away from my space for a long time, I call Monica and I say, okay, how can I fix this area? And the same thing happened. I got back from a month-long sojourn away from my desk, and I just felt really stifled. And so I sent pictures to you, and you, in matter of minutes, kind of analyzed it and said, well, what if you do this? And what if you try that? And so I ended up completely turning my space on its head and moving a majority of my books and inventory to a different part of my room because that's where my desk is. And it was a total game changer because I don't feel so much clutter or claustrophobia when I wake up in the morning and see things piled. Like, it used to be just piles around my bed of books and papers, and that were like organized in stacks. And then I learned from you on probably a couple of reorganizations ago, to ask myself, do I need this right here, right now? And it's been a big exercise in staying present, because a lot of times, like with ideas, I would leave my post-its just on my desk so I wouldn't forget about them, or I would have multiple to-do lists so that I wouldn't forget about them laying across. And it was getting to the point where I couldn't even put my laptop on my desk because there were so many things of like, don't forget, and paper. And so in working with you, I figured out my system to like brain dump during my writing process and then work it through to the end of the day into like a funnel. And I'm like looking over at my desk now, and I figured out a way to keep the things I needed in the moment of present with me and then put the rest in a thoughtful storage nearby. And it's so much easier to sit down and get to work, even when it's the
Okay.
admin stuff that I hate, where I have to like work on my website or figure out emails. I've been able to just sit down and focus on the task at hand, where I used to be so distracted by all of the I'd be pulled in so many different directions because of all the notes and lists I had. And I remember one conversation I was talking to you and you said, "What if you just didn't have those lists?" And I threw them away. I like crumpled them up and I let go of all those expectations of to-dos, and it was so freeing.
I remember that moment. You're like, this is radical.
I know. I think I was like, "Monica, what?" And I just would never have considered it because I'm such a list maker. I might not outline my novel, but I will make a list about it. Uh,
I love a
but
good checklist. Who doesn't?
it's just so satisfying. Cross it off. But
But we don't need to be a slave to them, especially if there are like 5 of them that are asking and demanding our time, right? Like if
yeah,
that's
and
the
I
case, it's almost like let's erase those from our minds, and then like what truly is a priority will naturally float to the top of mind.
exactly. And so that's my outlook now, thanks to working with you. And it's been a game changer because now I'm able to focus, like have my creative focus time for my writing, and then I can have my focus time on my writing business. And then I have a third business. So I've been working on that. And it used to be where I would be hopping back and forth like a little bunny trying to get it all done. And now I can organize my time and I have my space organized, because your environment really matters. I'm sure we all feel that after 11 months of being in our homes, that your environment really affects your output and your energy and your oftentimes your mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm so glad that space feels calm and conducive to doing your best work in all 3 of your businesses.
Thank you. Yeah,
Amazing.
I would say the biggest surprise that you shared with me when I was reorganizing was to flip my books so that the spines were facing inward and the pages were facing outward. And at first I was like, "Oh, I don't know, Monica." Like that sounds ugly. And it's so peaceful because you just have the calm array of little pink, not pink, cream pages. And I know I can go flip out a cover to look for it, but it I didn't realize how much all of the color and language on each spine of the stacks and stacks of books I have were calling to me and distracting me and making me feel like, oh, I need to be spending more time reading because there's only so many hours in a day. I can't do it all. I've tried.
Yeah, and I think what's so interesting is you're a writer, right? Like, so your world is words, but sometimes you need to break from those words, and so you don't need to see all the titles, um, you know, scrolled across the spines, and you don't need to see all those different, like all the packaging, right, of the book.
Yeah.
And the cream colored pages does create a nice, um, almost like meditative space, right? It almost becomes that blank canvas or that blank sheet of paper on which you can um, create your own work of art.
Exactly. I was going to say, I find that seeing the cream pages makes me feel more inspired because it's a reminder of like all of the words that you can fill all of that space, and it's exciting versus
Ooh, Marina.
I know. So I just did an unexpected outcome, but the I think the finality of these perfect book covers, while they are beautiful, it's intimidating as someone who's trying to get published versus just reminding ourselves of the process of and being present. It's very hard to stay present, but I'm trying. And I think that's a big part of letting go and organizing your brain, organizing your craft.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to all of us about organization and creativity. How can people get in touch with you?
It was my pleasure. If anyone wants to reach out, you can find me on Instagram at Marina Crouse Writes, and that's Crouse. And my website is the same, marinacrousewrites.com. I'm pretty active on social media, unfortunately, so I'll respond. So definitely reach out.
And if anybody is trying to form that creative habit, you also post accountability, writing and accountability sprints too.
I do every Friday night at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. I do an hour and a half writing sprint where I invite people to do a warm up with me. I'll give you a couple writing prompts depending on the genre you're interested in, and you write for 10 minutes and we kind of chat about it. And then we do the Pomodoro style sprinting technique. So for 25 minutes, you work on a concentrated project, and then we take a break and then do another 25-minute sprint. And I know we get tired, we get zoomed and screened out. So by the end of the week, it can be kind of hard. But for me, I really look forward to this like it's like a designated me time for creativity where it's not any specific project I have to work on for work. It's just for fun. And it's been a real joy meeting fellow creatives. And I have people who are writers, I have people who just write for fun come, and we have a good time. So
Awesome.
you can find more about that on my website as well.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much for helping us stay creative while organized. This has been an episode of This Calm Little Corner, and stay tuned for other conversations with other creatives, with other coaches and healers. Thanks.